right? All right. So, how do we actually get here? Why are we? Oh, there's one going. How are we actually getting here? Talking to. How do we make sense of hybrid and multi-cloud? And it really struck me that this Dilbert cartoon is a very good depiction of that. Because within many organizations, I think we're all talking about cloud, moving to the cloud, lift and shift to the cloud, cloud first, cloud native. But actually, what does it actually mean? What are we looking to do? Of course, the first thing that springs to mind, and we'll share the slides after the event, the first thing that springs to mind is cloud has got some tremendous benefits. There are benefits around the ease of use. Compared to an on-premises data center, if you need new capacity, if you need new storage, if you need new resource, it's just clicking a button and 30 minutes later it's there. Whether that's 10 nodes, 10,000 nodes, it doesn't really matter. And if you only need them for 30 minutes, no problem either. You just pay for when you use them as you use them. It's about a perceived cost reduction because of that. Because now you have a chance to really take the mobile phone pay-as-you-go model. Only pay for resources as and when you need them, as and when you utilize them. And then the last element is exactly that scalability, that agility, that flexibility that you have to very quickly and easily bring in resource as and when you need it. Okay, so far, so good. But what a lot of organizations have realized is that, so we're moving to the cloud. With hindsight, we've actually painted ourselves into a little bit of a corner. There were more challenges, there were more frustrations and things we hadn't thought about as we were moving there. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this presentation is look at those challenges, look at how we can address them, and give you a roadmap on what you need to look for, how you need to go from where you are now to where you'd like to be, and what you should look for in a platform in order to meet those needs and requirements. So let's first start to look at some of these challenges. Let's look at the landscape that we have within our organizations that we use on a day-to-day basis in order to do our analytics, to become data-driven, to get insight from the data that we have. And it very quickly starts to look like a siloed landscape, a fragmented landscape. We have many different systems and applications. And each of these is its own application. They do their own thing, like a data transformation, data engineering tool, like a data warehouse. It has its own storage, where it stores some of the data that it needs for that. And then you also have to tell it something around what I call context. For the data, for the application, security, governance, schema, control, who can do what within this system. And over time, historically, we've grown as organizations. We've acquired many different systems and applications in order to do more multifaceted analytics. We need to, if I put it in the context of a project, we need to somehow ingest our data. And more, that is becoming real-time data, streaming data. You need to ingest it and land it somewhere. But before you can start to analyze it, you probably need to do some transformation. You need to do some data engineering. You land it in a data warehouse, or you generate an operational dashboard in an operational database. But ultimately, if you're an organization that wants to become truly data-driven, be innovative and differentiate from your competition, you're really going to have to start looking at driving machine learning and artificial intelligence to production. Not just make it a research project that you do to, well, everyone's doing, and I think we can get some value from there, but really make machine learning and artificial intelligence an integral part in driving your business and getting that insight. To some degree, it is about maturing the analytics that you have. So over time, we've grown all these systems and applications, but the challenge is every single one of these systems has its own data stores. It has its own resources that do the compute, the heavy lifting, and it has its own data context, its own definition, its own understanding of security, governance, and control. And IT is the department in the organization that's then tasked with bringing consistency between these different systems and applications to ensure that a piece of data that is ingested all the way through this whole process in these different systems and applications can be seen or cannot be seen by the people in your organization. And that introduces security risks, because IT is doing that in many different infrastructures, in many different frameworks, each time completely different. So the chances that inconsistencies slip into this are very high. Very high. There's an increased security risk. Well, at the same time, the business users get incredibly frustrated. Because each and every time they go to IT and they say, can I have more data? Can I have more resources in order to do my analytics? What's the first thing IT says? No. They're the department of no. You have to argument. Or if they take it on as a project and make it a 6 to 9 month project to deliver you the new data that you need for your analytics, after which point when it's delivered you say that's really good and interesting, but now I need something more, now I need something interesting. It hampers the business. It doesn't make you an agile, dynamic organization, and as a result you can't innovate as fast. Now if we add cloud into the mix, it gets worse. Because every single time I start one of my workloads, for example, I start a data transformation, I spin up a new cluster. I need to tell it about security and governance. When the cluster shuts down because I want to make cost-effective use of my cloud resources, what happens to the data lineage? What happens to the data context that was created there? It is typically lost. We commissioned a report with Harvard Business Review, and they looked at what were the challenges in actually making effective use of the cloud. And they identified it's about complexity. There are many different frameworks. Each and every public cloud provider, or also the private cloud road that you may choose to go, has its own way of doing things, its own framework for security, its own framework for governance. It's complex. You have very different functionality. Different cloud providers provide different analytical capabilities. They're not consistent throughout. It is about the regulatory compliance. How do you, as an organization who is ever more subject to data privacy regulations, but also industry standards, how do you keep track of personal information, sensitive information across all of these systems and applications? How do you prove that to the regulator that you are? Now, many organizations have realized that in order to be able to do just that, we need a data strategy. So 70% say, yes, we have a data strategy. It's brilliant. But very quickly after that, the half of them say, well, actually, we have a data strategy, but we know it's not enough. We can't actually do what we need to do with our data strategy. And it shows. Why not? Well, we don't have the expertise. We have many silos of systems sitting there that are operating in isolation, the picture I just painted. And these silos are not just in the way that our data is organized, these silos is also in the way that our organization is organized. And the data is split across a vast array of different stores. 86% of organizations right now describe themselves as multi-cloud already. So if you're an organization that says, well, we standardize on AWS, we standardize on Azure, chances are that's the bit that you know about. 86% say they're multi-cloud. In 2 years' time, more than 75% of them will actually have a strategy that drives multi and hybrid cloud. And a year later, more than 90% of organizations say that having public cloud services is absolutely crucial to the innovation within their organization. But in fact, it should be so simple, right? Looking at the Harvard Business Review, there is one of the contributors that says it should be as simple as I just select the data. I select the workload that I want, I select the capacity that I want, click a button, off it goes. Nothing I need to worry about security and governance. That's all transparent. That's what it should be like. But that's not what it is like. Because we have the challenges of these multiple different clouds. We have the security and compliance. Yes. If you deploy to one geographical region in any of the public cloud providers, that's where they say they'll deploy it. But can you be absolutely certain it doesn't move? If that is important to you, the locality of the data, are you absolutely certain the data is not accessible by third parties? What about those data silos? If you're a multi-cloud organization, if you're already a multi-cloud organization, you have some of your data in Azure, some in AWS, some somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. Have you not actually created more silos of data between which you need to copy information around, where you have to, again, be responsible yourself as an organization for that consistency of security and governance? And then lastly, the cost element. public cloud providers, it's notoriously difficult to find the actual cost of what your application is going to be. Because even within a single public cloud provider, different analytical elements, different application aspects have different pricing models. Some of them are done by the volume of data stored, others by the volume of data analyzed, by the number of API calls. And oftentimes it is a mix between those. So not only is it difficult to calculate your upfront costs, also, if you take a workload that is on premises, designed to run all of the time, because you've got the hardware anyway, and you lift that application and you put it in the public cloud in exactly the same way without changes, it may be running in public cloud, but it may actually be running more than it needs to. You're not making a saving just by moving to the cloud. Just because it's cloud doesn't mean it's automatically cheaper. So as many organizations have found, and you can find some good research on that, their cloud bills are exploding without them realizing that was the case. So if I make a choice on what infrastructure I deploy my workloads to, I'd like to make that choice by a number of different metrics, by a number of different aspects. And they range all the way from... No, I go too fast. They range all the way from, what are my hardware costs? If I have a data center and I have capacity in my data center, that's something that I've paid for. So would it make sense to sweat that asset? But if I have maxed out my resources, the cost of acquiring new hardware may well be more than shelling out for resources that I get as I need them on a public cloud. The security element. Can I be certain that not only my data in my data center is secure, that my data in public cloud is secure, but that I have consistency between all of those? How do I make sure that I'm agile and scalable? Is the scalability that I have on premises enough? Or do I really have unpredictability in my workload demand? Is it maybe seasonal? At the end of every quarter, I know that our salespeople, they'll pile into their analytical databases and start querying to figure out whether or not they made their number, whether as an organization we made our number. But in retail, around every holiday, they have additional demand. In banking, every quarter, every month, every end of year, they have additional demand. How do you deal with that capacity without affecting the SLAs of the day-to-day users? And then lastly, that resilience and support. Resilience for cloud. There are multiple copies of the data center. The SLA on availability is given. Is that the same thing that you have for on-premises? And does the resilience need to be the same for every single workload that you have? And with support, I mean not the support as in can I call someone if something goes wrong. Support, if you have an enterprise application, you have it supported, of course. The support is within your organization. Do you have the skill and expertise or the desire to invest in the skill and expertise for yet another infrastructure to support? All these elements are aspects that I take into account when I have to make a decision for one or another infrastructure. And most of the time, I evaluate these when I first deploy a workload, and maybe again if I re-platform my workload. But other times, I don't touch them. So, what's in this aspect of hybrid cloud? I took the definition from TechTarget and I highlighted what for me are some of the key words. It's about on-premises, which then also include private cloud and public cloud services, allowing workloads to move between these different infrastructures in a flexible and dynamic way to give that flexibility and to have more data deployment options. Right now, is your business, are they able to say, I need to build a new data warehouse, and today that needs to be the most cost-effective data warehouse. It needs to be the cheapest it can be. I don't care if it falls over, but I need to have it at some point at the lowest cost. Or does your fraud department say, no, when we have our data warehouse, it needs to be the fastest, the most reliable, and the most resilient one that we can have, and we're okay with paying for that? They don't have that flexibility to make these decisions on an ad hoc basis. They make a decision, they stick with it. So, how do you tackle that challenge of hybrid and multi-cloud? And inspired by Simon Sinek's golden circles, I look at the why, the how, and the what. For the why, I first talk about why you need to look at an enterprise data strategy before you start to think about a cloud or more generally an infrastructure strategy. For the how, so how do you go from where you are now to the desired end state, taking advantage of multi-hybrid cloud? And what are those characteristics that you need to look for in a platform that help you implement that data architecture that you have right at the beginning? So let's start off with the enterprise data strategy. Hands up, who of you has got an enterprise data strategy within their organization? A few, good. I'm glad to see that. Then you will know why you need one of these. Because with an enterprise data strategy, you can start to treat data as the strategic asset that it is. You can be able to take that step back and focus on what you actually need from your data. What are the goals that you have? Where is it stored? Where will it reside? How will you secure it? How will you govern it? Because with that strategy laid out, how and where you will then deploy the various workloads and analytics that you need for that follow from it. So an enterprise data strategy typically then also defines your data architecture, your modern data architecture, if you will. Because that needs to provide the ability to continually manage your data. And what do I mean with that is be able to deal with any data. Yes, we all know and understand structured data, but more and more we're dealing with unstructured and semi-structured data, video, audio, weblogs. But in order to also address our corporate goals, our challenges of being able to sell better to our customers, be able to identify fraud, it's not a question of just implementing a better data warehouse. You actually need a wide range of analytical capabilities, all the way from landing your data to analyzing your data to generating a machine learning model, maybe, and back again to the beginning. And you need to be able to do that across the whole life cycle of the data. Certainly in heavily regulated industries, you want to make sure that you keep data for the right amount of time and no longer. And that security and the governance of that data needs to be consistent throughout the lifetime. You need to be able to track it and trace it. To be able to do that with consistency, irrespective of how and where your data and the workloads reside, and they can reside in any and all of the infrastructures that you are looking to support. If right now you're a multi-cloud organization, that will be in any and all of those clouds that you have. If you're a hybrid cloud organization where you have both a data center as well as public cloud, as well as maybe a private cloud as part of your data center, it's across all of those infrastructures as well. Be able to do all of those. Because once you can do that, once you do have that modern data architecture in place, now you can start to treat cloud as an infrastructure. You've identified what you want to do with your data. You know the workloads that you need to run. Well, where do you want to run them? If previously you as an organization made a choice to say, I go with one cloud provider because we need to dip our toe in the water, we just want to get started, that cloud provider comes with its own set of analytics. They're restricted to just that set of analytics, but is that really supporting what you as an organization over time, and that's changing, need to do? It allows you to take a step back and say, well, actually, I want to look consciously, I want to look at open source. Because with open source, not only do I have the cutting edge, I have the best and fastest innovation that I can have, I also am not beholden to any one provider of the software for the success of me as an organization. Proprietary software, I don't really have a voice in it. But if I invest in open source, either by contributing directly, by choosing a vendor that will contribute to open source, I have a voice in how the development and innovation of that software goes. I can start to balance those needs of the business and IT. Rather than them fighting like cat and dog and IT forever saying no and the business forever being frustrated and moving to shadow IT, I can get IT to be the good guys for a change. They can provide a self-service based platform where the business will have their own environments that are customized to their needs as and when they need them in a very flexible manner. I can start to keep that sensitive data secure, because as part of my modern data architecture, remember, I have that consistent security and governance for all of my data stores, for all of my infrastructures, for all of my workloads. Now I have a chance to, relatively easy, it's easy for me to say, but very easily to achieve and maintain my regulatory compliance and demonstrate to the auditors that I am. And now I have that chance for the business to say, my business needs change. Now I need to deploy something that's as cheap as possible. Next time I need to deploy something that's as fast as possible, but have a choice to dynamically make a choice between those two elements. Or maybe resilience is part of it as well. So that's on the strategy side. That's on the architecture side. How do you now go there? How do you go from that strategy to the actual implementation? And actually, the next 5 slides are from a presentation that I did together with Deloitte and Clearsense, a provider of healthcare analytics, at the last Cloudera Now session. So if you want to review that, please come and see that stand. We're right out here. I'll send you a link to that. So, first things first. I have my architecture. I have my strategy in place. What do I want to do as an organization? What is important for me right now? And typically I see that falling into 3 different categories. Organizations have the drive to either grow, connect, or protect. When it comes to growing, this is about how do I market better to my customers with greater efficiency? How do I identify those customers that are looking to move to another provider? How do I identify the customers that I actually want to keep, that have got a high lifetime value for me? On the connecting side, that plays very well to the area of IoT, where you have lots of real-time and streaming data. You slap a sensor on something, you call it Internet of Things, and that's good. Yes, it provides you with a tremendous amount of data, but only if you can put that data in context. If you can combine it with other pieces and sources of information that sit within your organization to be able to provide predictive support, predictive maintenance, where you'll be able to help a city like London become a smarter city. And lastly then, about the protecting side of things. Data is one of the most valuable resources on the planet. We've all heard that. So if something's valuable, doesn't it make sense that you'd protect it? Protect it from fraud. Fraud from both within your organization as well as outside your organization. Cybersecurity. But also in the area of protection is regulatory compliance. For financial industry, being able to show that you are compliant is your ticket to being able to do business. But as the volume of data that we have grows and explodes, how do you keep that overview? Well, we can help with that. So you figure out what you want to do as a business. The next element then is, okay, what data do I have? Do I have structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured? How is it relevant to my business goals? Is all of my data relevant to what I want to do as a business, or do I carry a load that didn't need to carry? Where does my data reside? Is my data ever copied between different systems? And if so, who takes care of managing and maintaining that single version of the truth, that golden copy of the truth? And which regulations apply to which data? Not every piece of data may be subject to GDPR, which is. Next element is, if I know my data and I know what I want to do, which workloads do I actually have? Which analytics do I need to carry out in order to fulfill that business goal? Where do they run? How do they run? And are they suitable for moving to the cloud? A workload that runs 100% of the time and is loaded 100% of the time, maybe that's good to keep on premises. But a workload that is very bursty, has got seasonal demand or daily demand where you only need it for an hour a day, that may be much more suitable to move to the cloud. It's also about the various resources that they require. A data scientist, when they're looking to train their models, they're looking for perhaps a GPU-based cluster. Are you willing to invest in that? Probably better choices than to move to the cloud. The next element is classify those systems and classify that data. If you want to achieve your business goal, and if you say, well, I'm going to move all of my workloads and all of my data to the cloud, then you'll only get value once you've moved all of that data and once you've moved all of those workloads to the cloud. Well, this is about being sensitive and sensible about what do I need to package together in order to satisfy my business goals. And from here, it's really easy because now you write your plan and you work your plan. In actual fact, if you listen to the recording from the webinar, you'll hear Clearsense say that this is only the start. Now it actually gets really hard, but at least now you have a guideline of how you're going to get there from where you are currently. So just to illustrate that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Clearsense as an organization. So they're a healthcare information provider. They're based in Florida, and they were addressing the challenge in hospitals and industry, healthcare industry, that doctors and clinicians, they know they have a lot of data. They know they can't see all of the data, and as a result, they need to make their decisions on gut feel. If only they could bring it all together and have analysis, but they can't understand the systems. On the other side, there are the systems implementers, the IT department of the hospitals, who really understand their systems, who really understand all the data that they have, but they don't know what the insight is that the clinicians actually need for it. And that's exactly the hole that Clearsense jumped in. For example, to be able to monitor a patient's vital statistics after they come out of an operation, there are certain characteristics that you need to keep track of, and you can use to very quickly be able to predict whether or not after the OP they'll go into cardiac arrest. And that's really a period of 5 to 6 hours that they have. Thanks to Clearsense insight into all of the data that they have, they can now make these sorts of predictions. They can help and support the clinicians in doing their work at the same time as being able to help the hospital run itself. It's certainly the case in the United States that healthcare costs. Who do you send your bills to? How do you send the bills? Who's most likely to pay? How and where do I have to line up follow-up letters to get the best possible effect on my payments? But as a result, not only were the hospitals more effective, because this was a very low cost and low impact solution, they were able to bring this out to a much wider range of hospitals that previously would have been unable to afford an insight-based system like this. So as a result, you could say that they're actually saving more lives. But we also know, and this is coming now a bit more to the technology, that each and every healthcare provider, each and every hospital and doctor's office, they make their own choices about infrastructure. We go with this particular public cloud. No, we want everything on premises. So as a result, one of the things that Clearsense had to be able to do as part of their infrastructure and deployment is work across this wide variety of infrastructures. And they do, using our platform. And if you'd like to know more about Clearsense, again, come and see me at the booth as well. So, all right, we've got the strategy, we got the architecture, we know how we're going to go from where we are now to where we'd like to be. What do I need to look for? What are the key characteristics that I need in my technology to do just that? So, it's 4 simple things. You need something that runs on any infrastructure, or rather, any infrastructure that you would like to support. You need something that will run the complete range of analytical capabilities that you need. And you know, in order to achieve your goals, it's not just a better data warehouse, you need a complete range. You need something that has that consistency of security and governance, and I'd also say control of data throughout its complete life cycle. And ideally, you want something that is completely open. And that's not just open source, that also means open for integration. You need this to link in, to tie into the existing systems and applications that you already have. So, technical characteristics, and when I was talking about this yesterday, It's 12 characteristics, 12 days of Christmas. I thought it had a nice ring to it. But to prevent having to go through all 12 tediously, I grouped them together in areas that I think logically belong together. And the first one, and I'll illustrate them using the Cloudera data platform as how and where we express these various characteristics and technical requirements. So first, you need to create a data fabric layer, and I'll come into a minute what a data fabric layer actually is. You need to be able to apply that consistent governance and control, track lineage and provenance. You need to know where your data has been and who's accessed it. And you need to be able to leverage these shared metadata services across any and all of the workloads, whether or not they're permanent workloads or transient workloads. So as part of the platform, before, what's a big data fabric that I spoke about? Forrester has actually got a very good definition of what a big data fabric is. It orchestrates disparate data sources intelligently and securely in a self-service manner, leveraging data platforms to deliver a unified, trusted, and comprehensive view of data across the enterprise. In actual fact, if you want to hear more about this topic, I have a webinar this evening together with Forrester Research Director Noel Johanna. It's at US time, so it's about 6:30 our time, 7 our time. But you're welcome to come and join for that as well. So as part of our platform, we have a number of different elements that will reflect just these. But just as a quick recap for the Cloudera platform, we have that wide range of analytical capabilities all the way from ingesting streaming data to landing it in a data warehouse to machine learning. We can deploy it on any infrastructure, and we have consistent security and governance and control of data throughout any of these workloads on any of these infrastructures. So when it comes to establishing that data fabric, that's really SDX, the shared data experience that will ensure that if you set a security policy once, it is consistently applied across all of the workloads that you have for all of the data, irrespective of where it runs. There's nothing that you need to do about it. It just there, it works. Set it and forget it. We talked about the data fabric, consistency of security and governance, but also be able to do that in a self-service manner. Remember what we spoke about, where business goes to IT and says, can I have more data, can I have more resource? And IT says no. What if we could turn that around? What if business could just go and find the right data? If they could find the data that they would like to use their analysis on, if they can find the data that relates to the topic that they're interested in, having found that data, curate and share these data sets between them within one department or within the whole organization, and hit a button to say, with this data set, now start me a data warehouse, start me a data mart, or create me a machine learning environment so I can start to work with it. No involvement with IT. And IT is happy because they have the consistency of security and governance, and they know that only the right people can see the right data. All right, the second set. A single pane of glass. Data discovery and self-service analytics. Actually, I just spoke to that. Processing and storing, capturing data in any format and anywhere, and especially edge connectivity. More and more, we're seeing organizations needing to deal with real-time and streaming data. How do you do that? How do you deal with high volumes of data that are streaming that all need to be captured and still need to be guaranteed to be processed in sequence or not, as the case may be? So starting with that last element first, as part of our platform, we have something called Cloudera Data Flow. It's building on NiFi, MiniFi, Kafka. All of the streaming open source technologies are part of that to capture that data and subsequently be able to land it in any of the other analytical capabilities that we have. The single pane of glass. One of the things that we heard our customers say before we had the Cloudera data platform, it's actually pretty difficult to implement. It's hard to do. There are many different systems and applications that I need to go to. So we now provide a single interface where both IT and business users can go in order to, for IT, create the security rules, create the access rules, create the governance rules, and have them consistently applied. And for the business to go in and say, find me the data, show me the data, what is the data related to the business term insurance that I have, and be able to directly start the analytics for it. And again, that consistency provided through SDX. Next two, remaining cloud agnostic and avoiding the application layer lock-in, and ensuring the portability of data-driven applications. Well, that's an easy one, actually, because the whole platform that we have, without redevelopment, without rekeying, you can take the same workload and deploy it on-premises today, to AWS tomorrow, to Azure the day after, and shortly in private cloud or Google as well. Different every single time you deploy it, if that's what you want. It's unlikely that that will be the case, but if you want it, you could. So rather than having to make that choice of, I stick to one particular infrastructure once I deploy, and maybe when I replatform, now the business has that ability to make that choice between lowest cost, highest performance, highest resilience, and find what is for them the optimum between them. And that optimum is changing as business needs change. You need to be able to move between different workloads. Between different infrastructures. But as you move between different infrastructures, and of course we'd like to keep the data exactly where it is, because moving data is not only costly, possibly, it's time intensive. We will also make sure that as you need to move data, it's not just data, but all of the security and governance policies that are associated with that data. So I still maintain that consistency of security and governance. I maintain full auditability and insight into who's touched my data and where it's been. And the last two elements, if you've been keeping count, being able to deploy workloads, ephemeral workloads, so transient workloads, to the cloud, and using a consistent hybrid architecture for containerized workloads. Because that's really where a lot of the workload is going, is being able to take that workload, leveraging Kubernetes, leveraging OpenShift, in order to quickly and easily shift it to any one infrastructure that you like. Our platform is built on that. And to help you support that overview as to how and where which workloads are running on which infrastructures, we have a number of different applications. As the management console gives you the complete overview where everything is, but very cleverly, the workload manager will keep track of how resource intensive certain workloads are, and start to make recommendations to say, well, this workload is running here, but it's 50% of the time it's idle. In actual fact, if you want it, it would be more cost effective if you move it to that infrastructure. You save costs, you have no loss of performance. The workload manager is also able to say, listen, you're using your on-premise data center, and end of quarter is coming. You're going to experience a tremendous peak in performance. Would you like to shift some of the workload to the cloud? Cloud bursting. The platform will take care of moving data, moving users, moving workloads to cloud for just that period of time that they are needed. In fact, the platform can look at any of the workloads that are running and is saying, this workload is running under pressure. I need to add more capacity. I need to add more nodes to the workload and scale it up. But also the inverse is true. If there is no demand for the workload, we're able to scale the cluster down all the way to a size of 0. So now you have the workload, no pressure, no resource utilization, no cost. But the first moment someone comes in and executes a query again, everything spins up again, and it will start to add resources as and when needed. So you have the most optimum utilization of resources, be that on premises, be that in the cloud, to meet the demand of your users. So, and that brings us to the end, really. So I hope that today I've been able to give you a bit of an insight into what are some of the challenges that we have with hybrid and multi-cloud, and the realization that it's going to be a fact of life for us in organizations, in our landscapes. I've been able to show you the why, the how, and the what of moving from your current state to taking full advantage of your hybrid or multi-cloud infrastructure. What do you need as a strategy? What do you need as a plan to go from one to the other? And what are some of the key characteristics that you need to look for in a platform? And I've also been able to introduce you to the Cloudera data platform. Now, all these why, how, and whats are actually summarized quite nicely in a convenient white paper. So if you'd like to have a read through, again, come and see us at stands right outside. We'll take your details and we'll send you a link to all three of these or one of these, whichever you like. So with that, thank you very much for your time. Cloudera is the first and only enterprise data cloud provider. We provide a Cloudera data platform, which provides you that flexibility of infrastructure. You can deploy it anywhere you like. It provides you the complete realm of analytical capabilities with consistent security and governance in a platform that's 100% open. And that's very easy with a cloud-like experience to deploy. My name is Wim Stoop, and thank you very much for your time.